I'm Heath Lambert, and you're listening to Marked by Grace, a podcast applying the grace of Jesus to all of life. Should we care what other people think about us? Should you care what the opinion of someone is toward you? This is a really important question for Christians to ask and answer, because sometimes all of us, and we all know people who are really enslaved to what people think about us. We call them people pleasers or man pleasers or man fearers. And we understand in the context of biblical Christianity that this is not good. This is sinful. It's a sinful disposition of the heart to be a people pleaser, to value what people think about you more than what God thinks about you. So we know that this is a problem for all of us sooner or later, and it's a perennial problem for some people listening. So even though that's true, though, sometimes we can swing the pendulum back too far. We can say, well, hey, it can be sinful to have an overweening concern about what people think. And so I'm going to turn, and what change means, what is good, what is positive, what is righteous, is to disregard what people think. And I don't believe that is the biblical solution to having an enslaving position, an enslaving view of what other people think of you. I don't think to change, to be righteous, to move away from that in a biblical and a healthy way is to just say we don't care and to disregard what people think. So we need to ask the question, is it right to care what others think? And how should we care what others think of us? As a matter of fact, we need to say right at the very beginning, there are times when we should disregard what people think about us. There are times when we just need to say, hey, I can't worry about that. That's your problem. That is not my problem. One of those times is in Romans chapter 1:16. It says, I am not ashamed of the gospel, for it's the power of God for salvation to everyone who believes. What the apostle is saying in these words is there is a temptation, maybe even a tendency, to be ashamed of the gospel. All of us who know Jesus Christ, who have turned from our sin and trusted in him, and we have the good news of Jesus in our heart, and we see that person at the supermarket, or we know that sister that we have, or we're talking with that next door neighbor, and there is a temptation and perhaps a tendency to be ashamed. To be ashamed of the gospel and to think, well, they're going to think I'm a religious freak, or I'm going to be embarrassed in some way. And what the Apostle Paul says here is, hey, I am disregarding what people think about me when it comes to the gospel. I am not going to be ashamed of this. This is the good news of Jesus Christ. This is power for salvation. Everyone who doesn't believe it dies. And I'm going with God and not with man on it. This is just one of those teachings in the Bible where we're told to disregard what people think. But I think in general, what we can take away from this in terms of a principle is we can say we should disregard what people think about us when what those people think about us is at odds with what God thinks. So anytime there's a contest between God and men, God trumps it and we disregard what people think. But that does not mean there is no time when we should regard what people think. In fact, really, if you live your life not caring at all what people think, you're going to get yourself in some trouble. And so what I want to do is talk about 4 times that I can think of when you actually really should care what people think. I am not saying, as I talk about these 4 realities, that these are the only 4 realities where you should really care. But when I get this question, should I care what people think about me, I can think of at least 4 times when you really should care. And one of those times we read about in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 15. It says, "The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. One time when you should think when you should care about what people think about you is when a wise person is speaking to you. When a wise and godly person is speaking to you and giving you wisdom, you should really care what you think. The Proverbs say a fool is right in his own eyes. If you just think that whatever you think, whatever occurs to you, if you think that that is what is right and you blow off other people's opinions, other people's wisdom, then you are a fool. What is wise is to listen to other people. And so one time when you should really care what someone thinks about you is if that person is characterized by biblical wisdom and they are trying to speak to you, you need to listen up. Another time that we should care what people think is when there is a reputational impact to their opinion. The reality is our reputations are important. You might call it your witness or your testimony. If people are going to listen to us when we preach the gospel, if people are going to listen to us if we give testimony for Christ, there needs to be consistency in our lifestyle. And sometimes people are going to look at us and they're going to tell us that our reputations need help. There's something about us that seems inconsistent. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 21, the Apostle Paul says, "We aim at what is honorable, not only in the Lord's sight, but also in the sight of man." The Apostle Paul, who says in Galatians, am I now trying to please man or to please God? If I were trying to please man, I wouldn't be doing this. He's saying it's God first all the way. The man who says in Romans chapter 1, I am not ashamed of the gospel, says also, you know what? I'm not just aiming at what is honorable before the Lord. I'm aiming at what is honorable in the sight of men. He does not want to have a reputation for being a charlatan, for being a fake, for being somebody who is up to no good. And so there are times when people are going to come alongside us and they are going to tell us things that say, hey, this didn't look good when you did that. Or when you did that, this created a problem. And when people do that, we ought to listen to them. We ought to listen when people are trying to help us see ourselves from a different angle and improve our reputation. Another time, a third time, when we should listen and care about what people think of us is when we're being misunderstood. In order for communication to work, communication can't just be what I say, it has to be what you hear. And listen, the clearest among us can misspeak. The clearest among us can stumble over our words. And as a matter of fact, we need a community of people who are listening to us, helping us understand whether we are clear or not. This was even true of the great Apostle Paul. The Apostle Paul asks for prayer in his preaching of the gospel, and he asks that he would make it clear which is how I ought to speak. Clarity is a moral virtue, and the lack of it is a significant problem. So if people are saying to you, I don't understand what you're saying, you shouldn't blow them off. You should say, okay, I want to listen to what you have to say. I want you to help me understand how I can be more clear. I'm living my life in relationship. If I'm going to communicate, I must communicate to other people. And if those other people don't think I am clear, then I need to listen to them. One final way that I think we should care what people think of us has to do if there is sin in our life. If we have sinned against people or they think we have sinned against them, if there is any kind of relational break with people, we need to care about what they think of us. In Romans chapter 12, verse 18, the Bible says, if possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all people. Part of this command to live peaceably with all people is to care what they think of us. Did they think we were harsh? Did they think we were mean? Did they think we were unkind? Did they think we were neglectful? Did they think we were too loud? What is the source of the conflict? And the Apostle Paul says it's your responsibility to live at peace with all men. If people think you're in conflict, now all of a sudden, Romans chapter 12, verse 18 kicks into gear, and you need to care what they think, and you need to marshal all of your efforts to try to be sure you live at peace. But it's very interesting. The passage says, if it's possible, so far as it depends on you. What this means is sometimes it's not possible. What this means is sometimes it doesn't only depend on you. A relational break is two-sided. It might be the responsibility of each of you. It might be your responsibility. It might be the other person's responsibility. What Romans chapter 12, verse 18 says, when it's possible, as far as it depends on you. That means you have to live it peaceably with all people as much as you can. There will be times in relational conflict where you're going to have to get some help involved, and you're going to have to get other people speaking into the situation. And I've had conflict in my life, and perhaps you've had conflict in your life, where I'm not just letting the person with whom I'm in conflict determine all of the boundaries. They're not just setting all of the terms. I've had to bring in outsiders, and you'll have to bring in outsiders that will say, hey, you know what? I think you've taken this as far as you can take it. Being at peace isn't possible right now. You have done everything it's possible for you to do. The ball is now in their court. So even in conflict, when you need to care what other people think about you, sometimes you still need to include wisdom, see the previous point, from other people to help you see like, hey, have you done everything it's possible to do? Do you need to do a little bit more? Or have you taken this as far as you can take it, and now it's in the other person's area of responsibility? So those are four areas. You need to care what people think about you when they're speaking wisdom into your life, when your reputation is on the line, when you're being misunderstood, and when there is conflict. There's probably, if we thought about it more, some other times we really need to care what other people think about us. But even just these four show us that while we don't want to be enslaved to what people think about us, it really is wrong for Christians to just declare, I don't care what you think about me.